In today's video, we'll be talking about Babylon. Um, if you haven't watched this movie, I'd say you should go watch it. It's actually a very good movie. Surprisingly, after all the reviews that I've seen online, a lot of people say it is a terrible movie. Why would they make this movie? But it's only when I started watching it that I realized this movie is actually a great movie to watch. Like you can truly enjoy it. No biases. I'm not I'm not coming to you guys as a big Margot Robbie fan and being like, just go watch it for Margot Robbie. But by watching the movie for myself, I actually realized, oh wow, it's actually a good show to watch. It reminded me a lot of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I liked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but obviously it's a different story told by different type of directors. The guy is mostly popular for La La Land. I didn't like La La Land because I'm not really a musical fan and I was worried about it. But one of the challenges that I have with Babylon is the way that they marketed it. I feel like these guys didn't put in much effort, but also what they highlighted to be the thing you enjoy the most out of the movie was actually not correct. How they speak about when you're watching the interviews, when you're watching these guys when they're on the press run, they mainly talking about, oh, there's a lot of sex scenes, there's a lot of orgies, there's a lot of these things. And for me, those things were not appealing. It wasn't appealing for me to be like, oh, I'll watch a movie because Margot Robbie is naked. Like, if you want to do that, go watch The Wolf of Wall Street. We've already done that. We've already seen her exploited as a sex goddess. Like, we get it. It's Margot Robbie. And Brad Pitt is almost 67. I don't really know if I want to watch a sex orgy of Brad Pitt. I don't really know if I want to sit down and watch 3-hour movie of a sex orgy. So I felt like for what the movie is, this guy's really messed up in terms of their marketing and the messaging that they were putting out there. Because the movie actually has more depth than sex orgies. There's more to it than that. It highlights the beauty and the ugliness of the film industry. It showcases what happens behind the source, right? Because this movie is set at a time whereby people were moving from the silent pictures to the sound pictures. And I feel another challenge that they had was this is something that you make for filmmakers. This is something that you make for people who are interested in film. And I think that has been one of the biggest reasons why it flopped. Because where Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was good at was it had three different type of stories. Remember, we were following Leo DiCaprio's character, but we were also following Brad Pitt's character and Margot Robbie's character. So we had a bigger storyline in the sense of you could, if you're someone who's into film, you could appreciate the way Leo DiCaprio's character was being portrayed because you're like, oh, this is what goes into acting as you become older, and then the exposition of like, oh, people know you as this character and this is how you get treated. And then for Brad Pitt's character, you're like, oh, this is a stuntman. If you didn't know what a stuntman does, it gave you an opportunity to learn more about the job. And there was a lot more that you could learn from Margot's character as well, like her being married to a director and how that lifestyle looks like. The difference with this one is it's focused solemnly on the filmmaking industry because the three main storylines that we're following, one for Manny, who's a guy who joins the film set as a PA until he becomes a studio executive and then loses it all, or the story of Margot Robbie's character where she is a star, somebody who wants to be a superstar, and we follow her character through her journey. Or we're following Brad Pitt's character, who's the old actor who's coming to an end of his run, right? So the problem with that type of storyline is it's not really relatable to people who are not in the industry, people who are not filmmakers, people who do not have a particular care about the history of cinema, right? So once they made that film, it sort of felt like it's a documentary, it's a historical piece for everybody who's involved in the film industry. So because for me, I think that's what hooked me. That's what actually got me there because I was like, I actually get it. In order to be in the film industry, it's quite expensive. So what a lot of people end up doing is there are two ways you can get into it. You get into it through being a PA, and then you rise up the ranks, you network, you connect, and somehow you end up at the top, which is what Manny's character, by Manny I mean Emmanuel's character, is. When he shows up, he's like, I'm just willing to do anything. I'm willing to work. I'm willing to do whatever. And when you're in the beginning, these big actresses, before they become big actresses, they're just normal girls. They're also people with a dream, right? And when you're all starting out, this is how we see him at the party for those who watched it, how we see him at the party the first time that he meets I don't want to butcher a character's name. I think it's the name is Nelly. That's where he meets Nelly. And when they start, it's like, oh, I have these dreams. I want to be a star. You are a star. And then he's like, nah, I just want to work and make a difference. And that's the feeling that you have, especially for people in crew. And I felt like in telling that storyline, what these guys probably ended up doing was they just got excited. Like, this is how we started. This is how a lot of us start. Let's tell the story. And the the main thing that I took out from it is, be it from the 1920s to even the 2020s, the film industry hasn't changed. Technology has changed, but the feeling and experience is the same, especially for anybody who wants to get in. I see a lot of times actresses doing whatever they can. When you're watching Margot Robbie's character, when she starts out whereby she's just dancing and doing stuff for men, you see that with a lot of people when they're working on little films where you have to do extra and get paid almost nothing, but you have to do all that to gain the experience that you need in order to jump in to get better roles, right? In order to have that experience so that people can look at you. I felt so sad because like there's a lot of exploitation, sexual exploitation that happens for women trying to get into the industry because the industry is just is it's I sort of say it's beautiful when the story is done, but there's a lot of evil practices that are okay within it, which I felt like was terrible. But anyway, let's get into the script here. So the first thing for me, if you've been watching my reviews, that I like about any movie is, what's the opening scene like? If the opening scene is great, then I'm sold. The opening scene of every movie sets the tone of what we're about to watch. It highlights to us, is this something that we need to take seriously, or is this something that is going to make us have fun? It's going to be funny. If you remember, one of my favorite opening scenes is in the Batman Dark Knight Rises, when we see Bane's character being arrested, and then we already know that this is not going to end well for anybody, right? That's the same thing with this one. In the opening scene, we introduced to Emmanuel, who was trying to take an elephant to a party, and the guy who he's talking to is like, hey, I thought we were getting horses here. Like, I thought I was coming to pick up a horse. I didn't think I was coming to pick up an elephant. How the hell are we going to pick up an elephant? And it just highlights what happens not Hollywood, but what happens in film. A lot of times you show up to work without knowledge of what to expect, because a lot of these things are secretive. And when you show up, it's like, damn, we got to do that. So I was just like, okay, fine, I'll watch it. And they have this shot, which is very disgusting, where the elephant, it for lack of better words, shits on the character, and we get a POV of this character getting shit on. And for a lot of people, that scene was disgusting. But for me, the benefit of coming from Africa is we have a movie called There's a Zulu on My Stoop, and this certain thing happens in that movie, and we found it as funny when you're watching it. The way they executed it was funny. So when I was watching this, I wasn't really like disgusted, but I'm pretty sure if I had watched it on a big screen, I probably would have been, because it was just nasty. It was a nasty experience. And I thought what he was trying to do was to give you the tone of what you're about to watch, how nasty it's going to be, because there's a lot of scenes that okay, and that set the tone, which I appreciate, but also like it gave me a bad taste in my mouth. Like, man, I can take this lightly, but it's like, what are we about to watch? And then from there, we move to the party where we're introduced to the three main characters and the three main storylines that we follow. The first main, being Nelly, we're introduced to her. She's wearing red and she's sexy. She's beautiful. She's this young talent that wants to be a superstar. And then she meets Emmanuel, a guy who wants to be anything, who just wants to work on something that, will get him remembered in history. And then we meet Brad Pitt's character. For me, in this movie, I know Emmanuel, he carries the movie. The whole movie is sort of centered around this character because he carries it, and he's the one who connects Brad Pitt's character and Margot Robbie's character. But the entire film almost feels like it's written from his POV. It's his story arc that we are mostly following. And I felt his performance was amazing. His performance is great. Margot Robbie's performance is great. I feel for Margot Robbie because a lot of times when people are dissecting this movie and giving a shit, it's her face that's there because I don't know, like if you would say she has. I feel like right now she probably would have been carrying the whole movie, right? But you can also suggest Brad Pitt, but I don't really see Brad Pitt doing a lot of like press or doing a lot of all that because he's man, he's done. He's a legend in the film industry. But her performance, like from just as a filmmaker, as somebody who's into directing, is like I appreciate it because she gave everything that she had, and you can tell how much she has developed in the past 10 years to becoming the success that she is. For me, one thing that I hate about Margot Robbie's acting is the accent that she has, that Brooklyn accent. Like it works in Wolf of Wall Street, right? But if we move from Wolf of Wall Street and we're keeping the same vibe, it's like I sort of feel like there's no range to how she acts, but I don't think is we blame her. I sort of blame directors that work with her, which I feel have boxed her into a certain sphere of person where I'm like, she's Australian. I'm pretty sure she has different accents and I'm pretty sure she can act differently. She doesn't have to act the same way in each and every picture that she's in. Like at some point you're thinking, is this the Wolf of Wall Street girl? Is this Haley Quinn? Like, what are we doing? You know? But other than that, her performances, the dances that she has to do in the orgy scene, that like what she had to do at one point when she starts puking on people when she fought the snake, like you could tell this is an actress that showed up to work who knew that she was carrying a movie. And I feel like this is one of those movies whereby people will reflect on it and realize this is like a timeless classic, but it will take time before the world appreciates what type of movie we have. One of my biggest qualms with it is that it's 3 hours. Like, guys, we can do without 1 hour of the movie. All right. Now that we've spoken a little bit about my thoughts about the movie, let's get down into the plot. Babylon is a 2022 American epic period comedy drama film written and directed by Damien Chazelle. The film features an ensemble cast that includes Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Diego Calva, Jean Smart, Jovan Adepo, and Lee Jun Lee. Its plot chronicles the rise and fall of multiple characters during Hollywood's transition from silent to sound films in the late 1920s. In 1926, Los Angeles Mexican immigrant Manuel Manny Torres helps transport an elephant to a debauched, drug-fueled Bacchanal at Kinescope Studios' executive's mansion. He quickly becomes smitten with Nelly Roy, a brash, ambitious, self-declared star from New Jersey. Upon meeting her and snorting cocaine together, Manny reveals his wish to be part of something bigger. While the elephant walks through it, distracting partygoers, Manny helps carry away young actress Jane Thornton, who overdosed on drugs during a Eurolaniac act with obese actor Orville Pickwick. Also attending are Chinese-American lesbian cabaret singer Lady Fei Zhu and African-American jazz trumpeter Sidney Palmer. The flamboyant dancing Nelly is spotted and swiftly recruited to replace Jane in a Kinescope film. During filming, she crudely upstages the star. Manny meets and befriends Jake Conrad, a benevolent but troubled off-married film star, and drives a drunken Jake home. Jake helps Manny secure assistant jobs at Kinescope, like finding a new camera to film an outdoor scene with Jake before nightfall. Manny climbs the studio's systems ranks. You know, this part where he's helping him find a job. So this is essentially what I was talking about when I'm like, he became a PA. On his first days, he has to deal with these guys who are on strike and they want to kill him. And then you're just like, yo, it's crazy. Because I used to work as an extra in movies and I know what it's like to be an extra. You know, I thank God like we have unions and different rules to date, but I'm pretty sure back then it was weird, man. Like at some point, a guy has a spear thrown at him. People used to die on set, and it's like, oh well, he died. Like what? Imagine that happening now. Nellie quickly becomes an it girl covered by gossip columnist Eleanor St. John, who also follows Jake's career. As sound film displaces silence in the late 1920s, many skillfully adapt to technical changes, eventually attaining directorial jobs. Nelly struggles to navigate sound film's demands and increases the drug use and reckless gambling, tarnishing a reputation despite money's assistance. You know, this is one of the sad things that happens in the film industry, the use of drugs. Like, for some reason, it's just a thing. You know, I can talk about it because I've been there and I've experienced it. And you're with these people whereby they essentially don't want to associate with you if you actually don't do drugs, because doing drugs is just a thing. And I'm not in Hollywood. I'm literally in Vancouver. We are like a mini Hollywood. And whenever I'm around these actors, their lifestyle is just something that's different. And it's so sad to me because I'm like, there's so much more to life than living for today. And I guess with the amount of rejection and the amount of exposure that comes with it, people tend to do that because people, I don't know, it's like it's just weird the amount of drugs that are in the film industry, entertainment industry, just in general. I'm like, sometimes I'm just like, I don't get it. But anyway, who am I? Um, Nelly shown to have an institution. Nelly shown to have an institutionalized mother, eggs on a drunken father, and inept business manager to publicly fight a rattlesnake during a party. He passes out and she fights the snake, which bites her neck. Faye kills it and sucks out the venom. Nelly passionately kisses her while running lines with his new wife, Estelle. Jack is devastated to learn his longtime friend, producer George Mann, has committed suicide. By 1932, Jack begins to sense that his popularity has waned, but still works in low-budget MGM films. Meanwhile, Sidney has secured his own musical film. Sidney has secured his own musical film and orchestra, but is offended when studio executive convinced Manny to request he use makeup to darken his skin for southern audiences. Upon completion, Sidney leaves Kinescope. As Hollywood becomes less libertine, executives tell Manny to fire Faye, a Kinescope title writer, because of a perceived lesbian affair with Nelly. Eleanor and Manny attempt to revamp Nelly's image and integrate her into Hollywood's high society, but Nelly lashes out against upper-class snobbery at a party, vomiting on a horse. One of the things that happen in film as actors get old is like the audiences start being unruly. The people stop liking you. We see it with actors every time. You're like, okay, it's time to hang it up. People will be like, it's time to hang it up. But for these people, this has been their passion. This is something that they pursued when they were young. Like when you're 20, you're like, I want to be a superstar. And you're just working. And then all of a sudden, you lose, people are just like, it's time to lose your job. It's a tough call to take, man. He asks Nelly to flee with him to Mexico, get married and start a new life. She resists, but eventually agrees. However, James' associate tracks Manny down, killing the Count and his roommate, but sparing Manny's life if Manny leaves Los Angeles. Meanwhile, Nelly reneges on her decision and dances away into the night. Jack encounters Faye at a hotel party. She refuses a departure for Europe. Afterwards, the despondent Jack returns to his hotel room and shoots himself. This part of it, like, of the movie, when we get to this part, this is where it gets sad, right? Like, this is the part whereby they're coming full circle. They've lived the high of the highs, and now they're the low of the lows. For Jack, when he finally gets that realization of his career is coming to an end, and having an understanding of how the world sees him, the world is laughing at him. They're no longer laughing with him. He's no longer the it guy. He's no longer cool. And I feel what tends to happen a lot of times is there's no one to talk to us, to tell us your time is past, right? And it's a difficult thing to accept as well, to be like, I've devoted my life to doing this thing, and here you are telling me my time is past. This is something that I love. This is something that I desired. This is something that I wanted. And who are you to tell me that my time is past? And I feel for him because when he was a superstar during the silent era, when nobody knew what he was saying, and all you had to do was be natural in front of camera and just act. Whereas now you have to act, but to convey. And people capture that. And people probably started thinking, oh yeah, you're not cool as well. And for him, I don't think back then they were doing therapy. I don't think back then there was conversations that could happen to being like, oh, you can change your acting into something like this. And I feel in those moments, with the advancements of technology, which is something that happens now, right? When you look at old actors, when you look at guys who've been acting in the 2000s, and then now you're in 2023, whereby people like me can literally just make an entire movie without the big budgets, without the big things. Like if you look at movies such as Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, whereby you have 5 people learning from YouTube how to use VFX. Imagine if you're someone who went to school, who prides yourself in doing these VFX type of things, and people now can learn your skill by themselves. And if you look at the introduction of AI into film, what that means for a lot of these people, for a lot of jobs, it's something that's terrifying, and it's something that can be hard on a person. So for me, when he commits suicide, it's not something that was surprising, but it's something that I appreciated, because it's like you sort of could understand how people felt, how his character felt. Um, in terms of Nelly, I think Nelly was not the type of person who would get married to Manny, and I felt for Manny because a lot of people are like that in the industry. A lot of people think that these actors, you have an opportunity to marry them, but in order to be an actress, in order to be an actor, you sort of have to have a different mindset from society. You don't really look at life the same way as everybody does. It's a see me industry. So for a lot of these people, life is just about having fun and being a character. A lot of times your life is filled with sadness and sorrow and loneliness because it's very hard to connect with anyone on a real level, because in most cases you keep having to you know engage different emotions. Some people have it and understand that acting is a job, but for some people they get lost within the fame and they lose their identity. And a lot of people also come from broken homes and from broken families to where but they don't even know who they are as a person. Hence they get into acting, and it's easy to act and be different characters rather than be yourself and be whole with yourself and have answers to questions such as who am I and what do I want to be, what am I trying to achieve. A lot of people don't see acting as a vehicle to an end. They see acting as the end. Their identity is driven within their acting. So when they lose relevancy, for example, such as Jack, they kill themselves because they don't see themselves beyond the film industry. A montage reveals newspaper clippings detailing Nelly being found dead in a hotel room at age 34 and Eleanor's death at age 76. In 1952, Manny returns to California with his wife and young daughter, having fled to New York and established a radio shop. He shows them the Kinoscope Studios entrance, but visits a nearby cinema alone to see Singing in the Rain, where the film's depiction of the industry's transition from silent movie to talkies moves him to tears. A century-spanning series of vignettes from numerous films follows as the focus returns to Singing in the Rain. Manny smiles. This part, it made me quite emotional as well. A lot of times when I was watching this thing is I felt I could connect with Manny. I never really wanted to be an actor. For me, it was always about being behind the scenes, but I as a filmmaker, connected more with Manny in the sense that sometimes, when we're starting out, I work with a lot of actresses, I work with a lot of actors, and we have these bonds that we share. But I do understand that when we become successful, our journeys will separate us. We'll go into different directions. They'll become superstars. They'll become the face of things, whilst for me, I'll just be the guy behind the scenes doing what I'm doing. And I've tried dating actresses and being in relationships. It's very difficult because they have to move in a different way. They have to portray themselves in a different way. They have to be desirable. They have to be all these things. And as someone who sees film as a means to an end, I don't see it as my life. Like, I'm not defining. I could care less what other actors thought about me. I don't want to be cool to get a job. I don't want to have to sleep with anyone to get a job. But when you're looking at these people, this is the lifestyle that they have to live. So when I was watching that, I was just reflecting on it and seeing how a lot of things change and how a lot of things move. And you're like, wow, this is the same thing. The same thing that happened in the 1920s is literally happening at this point. And when that montage happens, when you're looking at the Terminator, when then we go into Matrix, and then we end up with Avatar, how everything is different, but it's still the same. It's still the same film industry. The studios have only gotten bigger. Rich people have only become more pompous. It doesn't change. The film industry is just weird, and that makes it beautiful. And so I felt for Manny when he was seeing his life being reflected on story, and I'm pretty sure a lot of filmmakers saw their lives being reenacted on film. It's also unfortunate that Margot Robbie's character died, but for me, I wasn't surprised. These things happen. These people end up overdosing. Like in the past few years, how many times have we seen actors, have we lost actors and actresses to drug abuse, to weird things happening? So I wasn't really surprised by, they found her character dead. I was just like, yeah, that's the unfortunate end that comes with this industry. Fundamentally, I feel this movie was made by a filmmaker to pay homage to an industry he loves, that takes in young talent and chews them up and spits them out broken people. Okay, that takes in young talent and chews them up and spits them out broken. People who've had the highs of fame but lack the substance. People who've enjoyed the highs of fame but lack the substances to be a whole human. This has happened since the late 1923s, where the film film well, the film is based to this day. Hence Margot's character story arc. How many actors today? Okay, fine. How many actors? Babylon touches on different social topics within the film industry, from the use of blackface and the exploitation of black folks, how mitigation tends not to be the answer when those who control the money determine what is produced and feels super important to where the stars are seen as puppets. It breaks my heart when I go to film events and get to see some of these things in real life. We work in a cash burning industry. So a lot of times the people with the money do deal. Like if you look right now, the biggest investors in film is Amazon and Apple. These are literally people who just have money to invest, you know. But my conclusion is I recommend people go watch this. If you haven't watched it, watch it in your spare time. It's 3 hours long. So if you have a 3 hour flight, it's a good show to watch. If you're somebody who loves film, who likes the film industry, this is something that you should watch. It's up there with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's just longer, and the storyline is not really interesting as that is as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But if you're someone who's interested in the film industry, I definitely recommend watching this. It's up there. It's a good movie. It's a good time. Let me know what you thought of Babylon in the comment section. It's not as bad as people say it to be. A lot of these people, I'm starting to realize, there's a thing they say about critics. It's there are people who failed to become filmmakers, so be scared. Listen to them with a pinch of salt is all I'm saying. With that said, I'll see you in the next one.